Hey guys, welcome back to Wentworth Life, the channel that talks all things Wentworth, and welcome to the next Season 4 review. In today's video, we are taking a look at Wentworth Season 4, Episode 3, titled Prisoner, and this is a very, very dark episode. So, by the end of the last episode, Joan had put on the teal, and I don't think it really suited her, but she was headed straight for General. As soon as this episode begins, Joan is brought into General through the yard with all of the women there, and all of the women, they are baying for Joan's blood. They are all really super angry, and at one point Juicy Lucy spits into Joan's face, which is just really, really disgusting. I always have to look away during this scene, and also the scene that comes straight after when Joan is in her cell talking to Vera with the spit just stuck on her face. Joan is put into the same unit as Kaz Proctor, Ali, and the other Red Right Hand girls because, you know, Joan doesn't have any history with any of them. Yet. Joan is also confined to a cell with a prison officer standing outside her door, and even though Joan is being very tightly watched, this doesn't stop Joan from playing her manipulating games. It begins when Joan meets Kaz in the unit for the very first time, and, you know, Joan proper starts sucking up to Kaz, saying things like that she admires her for what she's done, you know, in the name of women. And she basically tells her not to listen to B. Smith's version of the stories on Joan Ferguson. Now, Kaz does make it clear that she will not use her Red Right Hand girls to protect her from the other women. It's too dangerous. And, you know, the other women, they really do want to kill Joan Ferguson, including Juicy Lucy and her crew. But B does remind them all of the new privileges and the new schemes that Vera has put in place. They will all be cancelled if anything happens to Joan. Even Will Jackson tells Vera that he doesn't want anything to happen to Joan until she's at least stood trial and faced her crimes. After that, in his own words, the women can do whatever they want with her. I mean, if we look at this realistically, Joan is pretty much looking at a death sentence in the end. At least that's what would happen in the real world. There's this creepy scene that always makes me feel a little bit weird. It's the scene where Joan is having flashbacks to her time in that padded cell, and oh god, she looks like she's like, I don't know, conducting some sort of orchestra in her head or something. This is clearly not long after the fire at the end of season 3, because Joan is there, she's still covered in all of that dirt and the soot from the fire, and it's really, really creepy when she turns around and she looks at her doctor who's watching her through the door. She looks absolutely demented, and I don't know what it is, it always makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable seeing Joan this way. Throughout the episode, we do see flashbacks of Joan in the mental hospital being treated by some creepy doctor guy who gets a little bit too close for comfort, but more on that in just a moment. Joan asks to see the peer worker, who is, of course, Dorene. And when Dorene goes to see Joan, Joan asks her for an airing and a shower and just some basic, you know, prisoner human rights. And Joan also tells Dorene what happened with baby Joshua and Jess Warner. That, you know, Jess was trying to smother baby Joshua and then Joan saved him, which of course that part is true. But Joan then does go on to lie about the fire and puts the blame all onto Jess. But god, good old Joan, she literally plays a blinder with Dorene, emotionally manipulating her. And this comes to Joan's favour later on when Vera agrees to Joan having 5 minutes of airing in the yard while being heavily guarded by the officers. It's not long before Juice and her crew and a load of the other women, they come charging towards Joan. And you know, the officer that was guarding Joan at the start of this episode, well, he gets completely taken out when one of the women, they end up throwing something at his face. I think it is like, it's some sort of maybe a snooker ball. I could be wrong. It could have been maybe just a stone or a rock, but no, I'm pretty sure it was like a snooker ball of some sort. Either way, this officer is down and he's bleeding. Miss Miles is there, she's telling all the women to back off, and then Dorene, she decides to stand in between the women and Joan, and she tells them that B told them not to lay a finger on Joan. And do you know what? It's a really, really great moment. We really see Dorene stand up to the women. She's really strong in this scene, and this was clearly Dorene's way of saying thank you to Joan for saving her baby without anybody else really knowing what was going on here, and I just thought it was really, really clever. Now, the women, they keep demanding to be that she sorts out Joan once and for all, and it isn't until when Joan, she ends up manipulating Miss Miles because she offers her a bribe of some money for a favour in return, and this is all planned then between Joan, Miss Miles and B. So basically, Miss Miles comes and gets B out of her unit at night and takes B to see Joan, and they speak through the bars. Now, Joan tells B to give the women what they want. Give them their pound of flesh, come to the showers and bash me, make it look good. You can see that B, she's dying to do it. You don't have to ask her twice, put it that way. But when B ends up walking away, Joan notices that B isn't quite herself. Something has changed. She's looking tired. Now, that's something Joan was always really good at doing, observing people, and I suppose their whole demeanour and their whole, the whole mannerisms of everyone. B ends up having a little chat with Maxine, and I just love this bit where all of the women in the whole prison, they're all chanting from their own unit, freak, 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 and they're banging on whatever they're banging on, and it always gives me goosebumps whenever I see it. And then B, she gets her shiv out ready. Now, when this plan comes into action the next morning, this is when we are treated to a horrific scene. Joan is in the shower block waiting for B to come and bash her. However, Juice and her crew, they end up arriving on the scene, and this is where they end up giving Joan a brutal gang rape. It's really dark and disturbing, especially when you see, oh god, the shower water turning red. Now, when B arrives, she sees Linda turning the cameras with a mop, and it always makes me laugh because, oh, good old Miss Miles, she's just one of the women really, isn't she? She just wears a different uniform. B then goes into the shower block, and this is where she discovers Joan on the floor in one hell of a mess with blood all over the ground, and it's quite clear where the blood is coming from. This is when everything changes. B ends up putting her shiv away and calls out for Miss Miles to come and help her, and Linda, she's just like, what the hell did you do? I mean, now, of course it wasn't B because she was only in there for what, 10 seconds, if that? I mean, it's clear that Joan was ganged by some other women from the prison, and B and Linda, they end up working together to help Joan get her clothes back on. B then, she slopes off to the dining room and keeps quiet about what has just happened. Linda, oh my gosh, she then carries Joan back to her unit, and you can't really make this stuff up, guys. I remember when I was first watching it, my mouth was open catching flies. I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. I couldn't believe what was unfolding in front of me. It was just insane. I was thinking to myself, oh my god, Linda is really in the shit this time. In fact, this is the first time we really get to see a more dramatic side to Linda Miles. It was the first time we really got to see Linda part of a meaty storyline, and it's great. Now, Kaz, she comes back to the unit just after Joan has arrived, and she sees Joan in bed, and clearly Joan is in a lot of pain. Now, when Joan removes a blood-soaked towel from between her legs, this is too much for Kaz. It's too much for me. I can tell you what, guys, I need a stiff drink after this. Kaz ends up comforting Joan and tells Joan that she will protect her. And Joan, she has this smug smile on her face. Like, this is what Joan wanted. She was willing to put herself through something horrific in order to get Kaz's protection. Now, don't get me wrong, Joan wasn't expecting to see Juice. She wasn't expecting to be ganged by Juice and her crew, but it still worked in her favour in the end, and it really is sick and twisted. We also get a flashback to how Joan managed to get a clean bill of health signed out, from the nut house. So the doctor guy, who I said earlier on was getting a little bit too close for comfort with Joan, Oh god, well he ended up having sex with her. Oh god, can this get any worse? Joan then used that information to blackmail him and to get the clean bill of health. And I just love the line, "You fucked the wrong lunatic." Best line of season 4 ever. Joan orchestrated everything perfectly. Everything is playing into her hands, and this is just the start of things to come. Now over to Maxine, and poor Maxine, she's given the news from a nurse in the prison that they want her to go into hospital to get a biopsy, just to make sure that the lump that they have found on her breast is nothing to worry about. But as we all know, oh gosh, it will be something to worry about in future episodes, and it's just so very, very sad. Now, Bea and Ali, they start to get a little bit closer in this episode, and I think this is the first time where we see Bea really get shy and nervous around Ali. I think this is the first time where I clocked on that something may happen between these two. It's the scene where Boomer is talking about getting a conjugal visit from Daz, and Ali, she ends up giving Boomer some tips about self-love, and this makes Bea feel a little bit uncomfortable. Probably because she's actually enjoying the chat that Ali is saying to Boomer, and you know, Bea, she's probably getting these very strange lovey-dovey feelings, and I guess she's very, very confused, especially after everything that she went through with Harry. But I do love the moment where Bea and Ali, they sit down together, and Ali tells Bea what good sex is all about, what it's meant to be. And Ali, she pulls like, you know, a little bit of hair out of Bea's face, and it's just such a lush moment. I flippin' love it. Oh, it just makes me a little bit mad because I know exactly what's to come with all of this in the end, but I'm just going to go with the flow, and I'm just going to enjoy and cherish these little moments that we have with Bea and Ali for the moment, although I do hate the writers of Wentworth for what they did. I'm only joking. I love you really, writers of Wentworth. Anyway, a great episode, which I'm sure shocked a lot of the fans all around the world when this episode first went to air. It's still shocking when I go back and rewatch it. I think my favourite part of the episode is when Dorene jumps in between Joan and the women, and my least favourite moment just has to be the whole ganging scene, especially the moments where it's actually physically happening. Actually, I just wanted to add another favourite moment, the moment where Joan says, "You fucked the wrong lunatic." I flippin' love it. Okay then guys, well that is my episode review today, so let me know in the comments box below of what you thought about this shocking episode when you watched it for the very first time. And if you did enjoy today's video, then please don't forget to hit that like and share it with your friends. And if you've made it this far into the video, well, thank you all for sticking around until the end of the video. Make sure you smash that subscribe button, stay safe out there, and I will see you all again very, very soon.